Using it as a tool to create interest in a franchise which has seen quite a dip lately is a really shallow thing to do. But it just feels like a marketing PR stunt, and I'm not okay with that. God, I hate when I'm right. I promise everyone that the next video will be the one that you voted for on the polls. But there's some news in the Thomas fan community that have rightly ticked off a lot of people, and I feel like I need to talk about it. I've seen this tweet from Train That Slams, which reads, according to a lawsuit with Ediville, brackets, Thomasland USA, Mattel openly admitted that supporting the autism community is not in the best interests of the company or Thomas the Tank Engine brand. In the attached document, it states, Mattel representatives resisted Railway's promotional efforts in this regard, with a Mattel representative stating on one occasion, in sum or substance, that Mattel doesn't want to get involved with that, i.e., that it would be in the best interests of Mattel or the Thomas and Friends brand to be associated with the autism community. Okay, let me clarify right now that I am not autistic. But just because I'm not autistic doesn't mean that I am insensitive to the autism community. I know how much that they support Thomas and Friends, and I am so respectful of anybody that supports Thomas and Friends, autism or not. I've covered in previous videos that I have mental health issues, anxiety, depression, stress, suicidal ideation. The list could go on. And I've been upfront by saying Thomas and Friends made me feel special and loved when I never did as a kid, or a teenager, or sometimes even now as an adult. When I did my Should We Talk About Bruno video, I did get some negative backlash about some of the accusations that I was making towards Mattel. I thought that they were just trying to appease a certain audience to get heat off their backs for the disastrous 2D adaptation, that it was just a publicity stunt. And in the end, the people that would suffer would not be Mattel's bigwigs or the corporation, but the child who has autism playing that character. And I am really worried about that child now after seeing this statement, because that poor kid has a life outside of Thomas and Friends All Engines Go. He'll have friends that will be rightly ticked off by this statement and will probably take it out on that poor child. We've known for years now that Mattel does not care about Thomas. They're like every other giant conglomerate corporation that just decide to take an IP, do the bare minimum, and then talk about it like it's one of their most prized possessions when really it's not. I'm pretty sure that I don't have a lot of football fans on this channel, but I do follow football, or for the American audiences, soccer. And there's some real parallels between this case and what I have been reading about from a football team based in La Liga, Spain. A team called Valencia was appointed a new business owner, Peter Lim, in 2014. At the time, a lot of Valencia fans were really optimistic about this takeover, thinking it could be the start of a new dawn for the club. It has definitely not went that way. Between strange managerial appointments, a lack of connection with Valencia's very passionate fan base, confrontations between Valencia's owner and the Valencian government, no investments in football signings, selling their players for relatively low prices, and having a careless attitude towards the club's history. You're probably thinking where this is going when it comes to the Thomas and Friends video that I'm making, but this is the point. Peter Lim's not one for doing interviews or making public appearances. He hasn't been seen at the club since 2018. At the time of this recording, it's 2023. However, he did do an interview with the Financial Times in 2021, saying that he regards Valencia as a trophy asset, which has been incredibly good for networking. And that, I believe, is why Mattel bought Thomas and Friends in the first place. Thomas and Friends is a trophy asset of children's entertainment. It's got an established history, a loyal fan base, people that love, care, and support the franchise through the best of times, the classic era and the Brenner era, and the worst of times, the Shannon Miller era and blah blah. But just like Peter Lim treats the club Valencia like a toy that they can just discard, Mattel are doing the exact same thing with Thomas and Friends. In this case, it's the literal sense because they're just peddling out, quite frankly, toys. I can't make any real comments for the fandom of Thomas about how they must be feeling. It wouldn't be right for me to make a judgment on it. But as a Thomas fan and someone who believes that Thomas should be inclusive for everybody, it really pisses me off to no end that something like this would come out. And it makes me very, very sad that something I predicted in the Bruno video has actually come true. Bruno was just a marketing stunt to make them look like they cared when this documentation proves that they really don't. The fandom are the only thing keeping Thomas and Friends' good name alive right now because Mattel doesn't care. They just think of it as a show for babies and want the parents to buy the toys so they can keep making profits. There's anger amongst the Thomas fan community right now, rightfully so. But what I think that we need to do is not rise to this bait. Let's keep doing what we do best, keeping the memory of Thomas alive as the way it was meant to be. Let's keep reading the Railway series books, both William and Christopher Audrey's adaptations. Let's keep watching the classic series. Let's keep watching the Brenner era. Hell, even watch the Hit era and the Sharon Miller era. And most importantly, to all the fan content creators, keep making that content. That's the shining light that we really need in dark days like this. I feel extremely fortunate that I was brought up with the classic era and the Railway series books. But as a father, I feel horrible that my kids have to be exposed to this utter tripe that is All Engines Go and the corporate dump that is Mattel. A lot of the fandom want Mattel to sell the rights to people that care. But let's be real, they won't do it. As I've stated, it's good for their business to have that IP in their catalogue. They would not sell it unless they were selling it off for billions. Maybe a lot of fans outside the Thomas community think that that wouldn't be the case. No, it's a 70-year-old brand, whether you look at it or not. That's outlasted a lot of big things. I've seen many TV shows come and go. Some were of impeccably high quality, but Thomas survived them all. It is worth billions, and there is no chance that Mattel will sell up shop. I don't want Mattel to act like this, but there's nothing that any of us can do about it, sadly. There's one thing we learned through 2022, we can kick up a fuss and we can protest, but the big wigs just don't care. Leave them to their own devices. We've got plethoras of fan content on the internet, brilliant stories, true interpretations of the characters, made by the people who really understand what Thomas is about. I don't want anybody to think that I'm disrespecting Thomas's name or taking a dump on it either. So if anything that I've brought up has been seen as offensive, I really do apologise. If you've watched my channel for long enough, you do know how passionate I am about this franchise and how much I don't want to see it go under. But sadly, that happened the second Mattel signed the contract. The Thomas that we know is gone. I hate to admit that, but it's true. This has just been the final nail in the coffin for me. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep on chugging.